let me take you somewhere unusual today. Not to a battlefield, not to a philosophy classroom, not even to a therapist's office, but to a quiet science lab where researchers discovered something that shocked the entire field of psychology. It happened in the late 1970s when two young social psychologists, Tom Pischinsky and Jeff Greenberg, ran a simple experiment inspired by Ernest Becker's work. They took two groups of people. To the first group, they asked ordinary questions. Describe a typical day. What do you value most? But to the second group, they asked something far more uncomfortable. Describe what you think will happen when you die. Nothing dramatic happened in that moment. People wrote their answers quietly, some awkwardly, some with sad eyes, some brushing it off like dust. But what happened after was extraordinary. When these same participants were later asked to give their opinions on politics, morality, or even a stranger standing outside, their judgments changed dramatically. They became more defensive, more protective of their identity, more committed to their beliefs, more hostile toward people who were different. All because just a few minutes earlier, their mind had briefly touched the topic of death. This is called terror management theory, scientific proof that the fear of death subtly shapes our behavior, our decisions, our reactions, even when we don't realize it. Let me give you another one. In 2010, in a study published in Psychological Science, researchers placed participants near a funeral home, not inside, just walking by its walls, and discovered that even the subtle presence of mortality made people more charitable, more empathetic, more supportive of family. Why? Because when death whispers, the heart tries to feel alive. And here's another, from a study in Israel. Judges who were asked about death gave prisoners harsher sentences, not because they were cruel, but because mortality makes us cling to order, to identity, to our systems of meaning. These studies tell us something haunting. We live every day influenced by a fear we almost never mention. The fear behind anxiety, the fear behind ego, the fear behind ambition, the fear behind love, the fear behind why some people become heroes and others become tyrants. A fear so ancient, so deep, that Becker says human civilization itself was built as a monument against it. The fear of death. But here's the twist, my friend. Becker didn't write a depressing book. He wrote a liberating one. Because once you understand how death shapes your desires, your identity, your relationships, your dreams, your suffering, you don't become darker, you become lighter. You see your life more clearly. You stop chasing illusions. You stop fearing shadows. You live more intentionally, more honestly, more freely. You stop running. Imagine this. Everything you strive for, your success, your legacy, your need to be remembered, your need to matter, may not be a flaw. It may simply be your beautiful human attempt to leave a fingerprint on time. And suddenly, Becker's work becomes not a philosophy text, but a mirror held up to your existence. Why do we chase greatness? Why do we fear insignificance? Why do we create art, love deeply, dream wildly? Why do we break under pressure? Why do we crave validation? Because mortality whispers beneath everything. And yet learning to live with that whisper is what makes life meaningful, not terrifying. So today, my friend, let me walk with you through a book that attempts something bold. To explain why humans live the way we live by understanding what we fear the most. Welcome to The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. Take a breath. This might change how you see yourself. You're listening to Wise Alchemy. My friend, let me ask you something quietly, gently. When was the last time you thought about your own death? Not in a dramatic way, not in fear, just noticed it. For most people, the answer is, I don't. And that's exactly where Ernest Becker begins. Because according to him, the fear of death is not something we think about. It's something we run from without realizing. Let me show you what he means. Years ago, psychologists interviewed a woman named Claire. She talked about her job, her worries, her goals, her frustrations. Nothing unusual. But when researchers analyzed her responses, they found something strange. Whenever topics came remotely close to vulnerability, aging, sickness, or uncertainty, she changed the subject. She tensed her shoulders. Her voice tightened. She didn't even notice. And yet, in her everyday life, her decisions were driven by insecurity, chasing achievement, avoiding failure, needing control, seeking validation. Why? Because deep beneath her awareness, the fear of impermanence was whispering. She wasn't afraid of failing. She was afraid of disappearing. That's what Ernest Becker calls denial of death. Not avoiding the topic, but avoiding the truth that our time is limited. Think about this. We go to the gym, take vitamins, avoid dangerous places, buy health insurance, celebrate birthdays, but never say the word death out loud. Isn't that strange? We build entire industries, beauty, fitness, medicine, technology, around staying young, staying strong, staying relevant, but we rarely admit the real reason. We don't want to face our finiteness. Becker says this creates tension inside us, a kind of invisible pressure shaping our entire personality. Some people chase success. Some chase relationships, some chase pleasure, some chase spirituality, some chase legacy. And Becker gently whispers, look deeper. These are not just goals, they are symbolic attempts to feel immortal. Let's go back thousands of years. Early humans lived in a world of storms, animals, starvation, disease. Death was everywhere, sudden, unpredictable. So, what did humans do? They created stories, spirits, ancestors, gods. Not out of ignorance, but out of emotional necessity. Because the moment humans became self-aware, the moment we realized, I will die one day, we had to create meaning to keep from collapsing under fear. Becker says consciousness itself is both our biggest blessing and our deepest curse. We can imagine, create, dream, but we can also foresee our end. No other animal carries that burden. This is where things become personal. According to modern psychological research, death anxiety disguises itself as fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of aging, fear of insignificance, fear of losing control, fear of not achieving enough. When you're scared to speak in public, is it really public speaking? Or is it a fear of losing status, losing reputation, losing identity? Becker says every little fear hides a bigger one. And that bigger one is the fear of not mattering before we disappear. That realization stings a little, but it also frees you. Because once you see the pattern, You can stop being controlled by it. Becker says humans invented something brilliant, the hero project. Every one of us wants to be a hero in some story. A successful entrepreneur, a loving parent, a wise friend, a spiritual seeker, an artist, a leader, a survivor, a healer, a creator. Not because we're arrogant, but because deep inside we want our life to mean something. Meaning is our shield against death. Legacy is our symbolic immortality. Love is our emotional immortality. Art is our creative immortality. Kindness is our spiritual immortality. We're all trying to live in a way that says to the universe, I was here, and it mattered. Have you ever wondered why human beings are obsessed with meaning? Why we build religions, create art, write books, chase success, fall in love, raise families? Why we care so deeply about the question, what is my purpose? No other species on Earth wakes up wondering, why am I here? Does my life matter? What is my legacy? But humans do, every day. And Ernest Becker says, the reason is simple, but also unsettling. Because we know we are going to die, and meaning is the bridge we build against that truth. Let me explain gently. Anthropologists believe that early humans became emotionally human the moment they gained something no other creature had: self-awareness. A monkey sees its reflection and maybe recognizes itself, but it does not imagine the future. It does not imagine its own end. Humans did. We gained the ability to dream, but also the ability to foresee our disappearance. That awareness created a tension inside us. The body wants to survive, but the mind knows survival is temporary. This contradiction is the emotional engine of human life. To live with that awareness, we needed something powerful. We needed meaning. Modern psychology confirms this. People who feel their life has meaning experience lower anxiety, higher resilience, better decision-making, stronger relationships, deeper well-being. Meaning is not philosophical, it's biological. It stabilizes your inner world. It gives structure to your emotions. It tells your brain, life isn't random. You're part of something bigger. Without meaning, the mind becomes chaotic, pulled in every direction, easily overwhelmed, easily broken. Meaning is the emotional anchor we use to stay steady against the storm of mortality. Becker says something bold. Human culture is a giant meaning-making machine. Everything we build, religion, laws, arts, family names, achievements, they're all ways of telling ourselves, my life matters. Ancient civilizations created gods, not because they were primitive, but because they were intelligent. They wanted to belong to a story that continues beyond their life. My friend, that's not superstition. That's emotional architecture. Myths gave us identity. Morality gave us guidelines. Rituals gave us comfort. Community gave us purpose. All of it, humanity's answer to the fear of impermanence. You might think this is ancient history, but Becker says modern humans are more religious than ever, just in different ways. Today, our religions look like success, fame, productivity, passion, hustle culture, personal brand, relationships, activism, art, ideology, nation, Identity. We cling to these with the same intensity people once clung to temples, because deep inside, we're still trying to overcome the same fear, the fear of being insignificant. We don't chase achievement because we're ambitious. We chase it because we want to prove we lived. We don't seek validation because we're weak. We seek it because we want to matter. Every human, Becker says, is trying to be a hero in the story of their own life. But here's the painful part. When people lose meaning, when their career collapses, when a relationship ends, when dreams fade, when identity breaks, something deeper collapses too. The illusion of immortality. That's why midlife crises happen. That's why existential depression hits even successful people. That's why people who have everything still feel empty. Because without meaning, the fear of existence comes rushing back in again. Not the fear of death itself, but the fear of living without purpose. Let me give you Becker's core idea in one sentence. Meaning is how the mind makes peace with mortality. And that's not depressing. It's empowering. Because if meaning is something we create, then we get to choose what gives our life value. Your purpose is not something you find. It's something you build. And when you build it consciously, your emotional world becomes grounded, stable, alive. Oh, my friend, meaning is not the opposite of death. Meaning is how we live fully, even knowing death exists. What if I told you that every single person you know, your parents, your friends, your heroes, your enemies, even you, is quietly working on the same invisible mission? A mission we never talk about. A mission we rarely understand. A mission that shapes our choices, our relationships, our desires, our identities. Becker calls it the Hero Project. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start gently. Humans know we're mortal. We know one day we'll disappear. But emotionally, we can't accept being insignificant. We need to matter. We need to be remembered. We need to feel like our life leaves a mark. So, we create our own personal hero story. Some people try to be a hero in their career. I'll become successful enough that people will remember me. Some try in relationships. I'll be someone's everything. Some try through spirituality. I will be pure enough, enlightened enough, chosen enough. Some try through creativity. My art will outlive me. Some try through power. I will build something that cannot be ignored. Everyone is building their own version of immortality. Not literal immortality, but symbolic immortality. The feeling that I lived and it mattered. That's the Hero Project. Think about the musician who spends years perfecting one album, the entrepreneur who sacrifices everything for a dream, the parent who pours their identity into their child's success, the activist who fights passionately for a cause, the influencer obsessed with numbers and validation, the student who panics at the idea of failure, the athlete who pushes their body past limits. On the surface, these look like goals or passions. But Becker says beneath them lies the same emotional desire. Let me be more than a small creature with a short life. Oh, my friend, that realization is both heartbreaking and beautiful. Think about the people you admire. Gandhi, Mandela, Marie Curie, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Malala, artists, thinkers, revolutionaries, creators. They all built a story bigger than themselves. And when we admire them, we're not just appreciating their achievements. We're thinking, I wish my life had that level of meaning. Heroes remind us what symbolic immortality looks like. But here's the part Becker wants you to see. The part most people avoid. Your hero project can also hurt you. Because if your identity depends on being a hero, then anything that threatens that identity becomes terrifying. This is why failures feel like death. Rejection feels like death. Humiliation feels like death. Losing a job feels like death. Heartbreak feels like death. We're not just losing something external, we're losing our hero story. That's why some people collapse emotionally when their career breaks, or when a relationship ends, or when dreams don't materialize. Their hero project is falling apart, and without it, they feel like nothing. You want to know something bold? Most conflicts in the world come from clashing hero projects. Nations want to be heroes. Religions want to be heroes. Families want to be heroes. Individuals want to be heroes. In relationships, two people sometimes fight because each person wants to be the hero of the story. Not the villain, not the side character, the hero. We're all trying to live a life that proves we matter. That's the silent competition beneath society. Now, here's the comforting part. Becker doesn't say the hero project is wrong. He says it's necessary. It's how humans cope with the knowledge of mortality. It's how we create meaning. It's how we build civilizations, art, culture, science, love. The problem is not wanting to be a hero. The problem is not knowing that you're trying to be one. Once you become aware of your hero project, you stop being controlled by it. You stop chasing empty goals. You stop competing with others. You stop fearing failure. You stop clinging to validation. You begin living intentionally. Oh, my friend, awareness is the first step to emotional freedom. If the hero project is the story you build around your life, then your ego is the character you created to play the lead role. But here's the twist Becker wants you to see. Your ego wasn't born from confidence. It was born from fear. Not fear of failure, not fear of judgment, not fear of embarrassment, but the deepest fear of all, the fear of not existing. Let's go back to where it began. Imagine yourself as a child, small, helpless, fragile, struggling to understand the world. You didn't have language for fear, but you felt vulnerability. You felt small. You felt dependent on others for everything: food, comfort, survival, meaning. That early vulnerability is overwhelming for a young mind. So what does the child do? It begins building an identity, a shield, a tiny self. I am good. I am smart. I am loved. I am brave. I am special. These are not just statements. They are emotional survival strategies. Your ego, your sense of self, was crafted to push back against the terror of being tiny in a huge world. The ego whispers, "You matter. You're important. You exist." This is the birth of psychological armor. As you grow, your identity becomes more complex. I'm intelligent. I'm kind. I'm resilient. I'm successful. I'm creative. I'm strong. I'm spiritual. These become your emotional anchors. They tell your brain, I am not just a temporary creature. I am someone. Your ego helps maintain the illusion of permanence in a world full of uncertainty. But this comes with a cost. Because the ego was built to shield you, anything that threatens it feels like an attack on your existence. For example, someone criticizes your work, you feel personally attacked. You fail at something, you feel worthless. A relationship ends, you feel broken. A person disagrees with your beliefs, you feel threatened. A person ignores you, you feel invisible. It's not the event itself causing pain. It's the ego saying, my armor is cracking. Becker says the ego is a fragile construction, powerful, but fragile, because it is built on the intent to feel permanent in a world where nothing is. Here is something important, my friend. Your ego is not selfish. It's scared. It asks for validation, not out of greed, but out of a deep longing to feel real. When someone praises you, loves you, recognizes you, celebrates you, your ego whispers, oh, maybe I do matter. This is why we chase approval, why rejection hurts, why comparison breaks us. Validation is emotional oxygen for the ego. But the more validation you need, the more fragile your identity becomes. Because if your sense of self comes from outside, it can be taken away just as easily. Let's be gentle here. People often say, kill the ego, or ego is the enemy. But Becker takes a different approach. The ego is necessary, but it becomes dangerous when you believe it is the real you. Your ego is a mask, beautiful, expressive, protective, but still a mask. Behind it is something deeper, softer, more real. Your awareness, your presence, your humanity, your vulnerability. The ego says, I must be extraordinary. Your deeper self says, I just want to be true. Here's Becker's core insight. The ego is your psychological defense against mortality. When the ego grows stronger, you feel safer. When the ego cracks, mortality anxiety leaks through. This is why humiliation feels unbearable. Failure feels like disappearing. Existential crises happen in silence. Aging feels emotionally heavy. Losing status feels like losing identity. Your ego is desperately trying to keep your symbolic immortality intact. Once you see this, you start understanding your emotional reactions with compassion, not judgment. Becker doesn't ask you to destroy your ego. He asks you to stop being ruled by it, to stop measuring your worth in external achievements, external validation, external symbols of importance, to stop believing that you must be somebody to justify your existence. Because real freedom starts when you whisper, I don't have to be extraordinary to live a meaningful life. That's the beginning of emotional liberation. Let me tell you a truth that most people never hear in their entire life. Your anxiety is not a flaw. It's a signal, a message, a warning from the deepest part of your mind. Not about danger, not about failure, not even about the future. but about your identity. When psychologists study anxiety, they see the surface: racing thoughts, tight chest, shaky hands, restlessness, overthinking. But Becker asks us to look deeper. Anxiety is what leaks out when your ego feels threatened. Not physically threatened, emotionally threatened. Your identity, your self-image, your sense of meaning. When any of these are in danger, your body reacts as if your life is in danger, because, emotionally, it is. Your ego is built to protect you from the terror of meaninglessness. So when the ego cracks, anxiety rises like smoke from a hidden fire. Let's be honest, my friend. Sometimes a tiny event can cause a massive internal storm. A message left on seen, a slow response, a small mistake, a critical comment, a social awkward moment, a failed attempt, a missed opportunity, an uncertain future. It seems small on the outside, but on the inside, it shakes your identity. It whispers, "What if I'm not enough? What if I fail? What if I'm forgettable? What if people don't care? What if I don't matter?" That's not anxiety about the situation. That's anxiety about your significance. That's Becker's insight. Anxiety is symbolic, not literal. Your mind is not terrified of the event, but what the event means for your story. The two types of anxiety. Becker describes two forces inside every human. The desire to be something more, to be meaningful, special, remembered, loved, important, a hero in your own story. The limitations of being human. We fail, we age, we get ignored, we feel small, we get scared, we lose control, we disappear into time. Anxiety is what happens when these two forces collide. When your infinite longing meets your finite reality. When the ego says, "Be extraordinary," but life says you are human. That clash creates the emotional earthquake we call anxiety. Modern society doesn't help. Everywhere you look, success stories, perfect bodies, curated lives, impossible standards, public judgments, constant comparison, digital immortality, pressure to be unique. This environment amplifies Becker's theory. Everyone is trying to be a hero in a world where everyone else is also trying to be a hero. No wonder anxiety has become the default human emotion. We're all fighting for significance in an endless crowd. Becker's view of anxiety is surprisingly gentle. Your anxiety is the echo of your desire to matter. It's the emotional reminder that you want your life to be meaningful. It means you care. It means you're human. It means your heart is awake. But the problem comes when you misunderstand anxiety as danger instead of communication. Your anxiety is not telling you stop. It's telling you your identity is under pressure. Your ego is trying too hard to be perfect. Your story needs rewriting. Anxiety is the messenger, not the villain. Anxiety becomes overwhelming when your ego demands more from you than your humanity can deliver. Be extraordinary. Be flawless. Be admired. Be remembered. Be strong. Be successful. Be perfect. No human can carry this weight. When your ego tries to be infinite, Your nervous system breaks. The tension becomes unbearable. Thoughts speed up. Breathing tightens. Your mind panics. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something unrealistic is being asked of you. Oh, my friend, your mind is not failing. It's protecting you from a self-image that has become too heavy. You do not have to be the hero your ego demands. You only need to be the human you already are. When you stop trying to be larger than life, anxiety softens, breathing slows, the mind relaxes, your emotions settle, because your ego no longer needs to fight for survival. You stop chasing perfection and start embracing presence. You stop trying to impress the world and start experiencing the world. You stop trying to be immortal and start trying to be real. And that is the beginning of emotional peace. Have you ever wondered why society feels so heavy? Why people chase money like oxygen? Why nations fight over identity? Why careers consume our self-worth? Why we cling to beliefs like lifeboats? Why status feels like survival? Becker says it's because society itself is built on a powerful illusion. The illusion that we can escape death by becoming part of something bigger than ourselves. Civilization, he says, isn't just a structure of laws and systems, it's an emotional shelter, a psychological fortress, a symbolic immortality project. Becker argues that cultures are not random. They are meaning-making machines. Each society tells its people, this is how to be someone. This is how to matter. This is how to live a good life. This is how you become part of something eternal. But the catch? Each society chooses a different story. Some cultures say, be religious and you live forever. Others say, be successful and you will be remembered. Others say, serve your nation and your name will live on. Others say, build wealth, build legacy, build influence. And modern society? Modern society says, go viral, build a brand, become iconic. None of this is wrong. Becker simply wants you to see the emotional truth. Society gives you an identity so you don't feel small in the face of mortality. Here's where it gets painful, my friend. When society tells you what should make you meaningful, you start chasing systems instead of your soul. You start believing, if I'm not successful, I'm nothing. If I don't achieve something big, I wasted my life. If I'm not perfect, I don't deserve love. If I'm not visible, I don't exist. If I'm not productive, I have no worth. These are not personal insecurities. These are cultural scripts. Scripts that promise symbolic immortality but deliver emotional exhaustion. One of society's strongest illusions is nationalism. People feel deeply attached to a flag, a border, a history, a group identity. Why? Because belonging to a nation makes you feel like you're part of a story that existed before you and will continue after you're gone. It gives you immortality through identity. But this illusion also creates conflict. My group's meaning is more important than your group's meaning. Becker would say, wars are battles between immortality systems. That's heavy, but also revealing. Let's talk about something modern. Why does fame feel so intoxicating? Why does success feel like survival? Because in today's world, fame has replaced religion for many people. Followers equals significance. Attention equals validation. Visibility equals existence. But fame is fragile. Success is temporary. Relevance fades faster than ever before. And when your society ties your worth to something so unstable, your emotional life becomes hostage to external forces. You build your hero project on shifting sand. Becker also points out something bittersweet. Modern culture often treats romantic love as a salvation project. We expect a partner to validate us, complete us, heal us, define us, make us feel immortal. But no human being can carry that weight. When you expect love to give you immortality, you put impossible pressure on relationships. This leads to heartbreak, not because love failed, but because expectations did. One more illusion, my friend. People cling to belief systems, political, spiritual, ideological, not because they're always right, but because being right feels like being secure. It feels like your worldview is strong enough to outlive you. Becker would say, when someone attacks your beliefs, your ego panics like your life is threatened. Because for many people, belief is identity. Identity is immortality. Now here's the breakthrough, my friend. Becker doesn't ask you to reject society's illusions. He asks you to see them clearly. Once you realize success is a story, nations are stories, identity is a story, money is a story, status is a story, fame is a story, legacy is a story. You stop letting these stories control your emotional life. You begin to live with intention, not pressure. You choose meaning instead of inheriting it. You start asking, what truly matters to me, not what society told me should matter? That question is the doorway to emotional freedom. Something most people never say out loud. We don't fall in love because we're weak. We fall in love because we're human. Love is not just a feeling. It's not just chemistry, not even just connection. According to Becker, love is something far deeper. Love is our most powerful shield against the fear of mortality. That sounds dramatic, right? But stay with me. You'll see exactly what he means. Think about the first time you truly loved someone, a partner, a friend, a parent, a child. Notice how alive you felt? Suddenly the world seemed brighter, your emotions deeper, your days meaningful, your existence validated. Love tells your ego, you matter to someone. Your life is not insignificant. You are not alone on this planet. This is emotional immortality. Your story merges with someone else's story, and together you feel stronger than your individual fears. Love makes death feel further away. And that's why it feels so warm, so necessary, so intoxicating. Becker says love gives us something society can't: personal meaning. Society tells you, be successful to matter. Achieve something big, be admired. But love says, you matter simply because you exist. No achievement required, no audience needed, no hero project necessary. That's powerful. Love makes us feel seen in a world that constantly makes us feel invisible. When someone looks at you and says, "You're important to me," your mind whispers, maybe my life has weight beyond my fears. Now, my friend, this is where the story becomes painful. If love protects us from the fear of death, then losing love removes that protection. This is why heartbreak feels like dying, why rejection feels unbearable, why abandonment shatters the nervous system. You're not just losing a person, you're losing your emotional anchor, your identity reflection, your symbolic immortality, your sense of mattering, your shield against existential fear. That's why people say, it feels like my world collapsed. It feels like I'm empty. It feels like I don't know who I am anymore. Because when the relationship ends, your hero story collapses with it. Love made you feel infinite. Losing love reminds you you're human. And that contrast is devastating. Becker says something very honest. We hope another person can save us from the fear of being alone in the universe. We expect a partner to be our purpose, our meaning, our validation, our safety, our emotional home, our witness, our immortality. But no human can carry that much psychological weight. That's why relationships break under pressure. Not because love failed, but because expectations were too heavy. Love wasn't meant to erase fear. It was meant to help us face it together. Becker never says love is bad. He says love is beautiful because it's honest. It doesn't promise immortality. It doesn't promise perfection. It doesn't promise safety forever. It promises something simpler. I will face the human condition with you. Two fragile beings, both aware of their limits, choosing to create meaning together. That is love at its highest form. Not possession, not salvation, not ego, but companionship in the face of existence. Becker ends this idea with a gentle shift. Love is a way to feel alive, not a way to avoid death. When you let love be love, not your identity, not your hero story, not your sense of immortality, it becomes lighter, deeper, more authentic. Heartbreak becomes survivable. Relationships become healthier. Attachment becomes humane, not desperate. You stop expecting love to fix you and start letting love grow you. You begin loving from freedom, not from fear. Oh, my friend, that's when love finally feels real. My friend, have you ever had a moment when life suddenly stopped making sense? When everything felt too heavy, too confusing, too directionless? A moment when you looked at your own life and thought, what am I doing? Why am I here? What's the point of any of this? If so, you've experienced what Becker calls the collapse of the immortality project. This is one of the most painful and most transformative human experiences. Let's understand it gently. Remember the Hero Project from Chapter 3. Every human builds a personal story that says, I matter because of this. My life is meaningful because of this. It might be your work, your relationship, your success, your family, your ideology, your talent, your dreams, your spiritual path, your identity. But here's the thing, my friend. All hero stories are fragile. And when the story collapses, you collapse with it. Let me give you examples of moments where immortality fails. A relationship that defined you ends. A career you built for years falls apart. A dream you believed in disappears. A failure shatters your confidence. A betrayal cuts your identity. A life transition makes you feel lost. A health scare disrupts your sense of stability. A personal belief breaks under truth. You wake up one day feeling empty, despite having everything. These moments aren't just emotional. They are existential. Your identity, the armor you built, stops protecting you, and you suddenly feel the rawness of being human. It's like the ground beneath you dissolves, and you can't remember who you were or who you're supposed to be. Becker says something shocking. People don't break down because life gets hard. People break down because their story stops working. Your hero project fails. Your ego loses its shape. Your meaning disappears. This creates a deep inner panic, even if you don't consciously understand it. That panic is not you being weak, not you being dramatic. It is your mind whispering, the world no longer fits the way I believed it did. I need a new meaning. When your immortality system collapses, you may experience depression, emotional numbness, anxiety spikes, lack of motivation, isolation, existential dread, constant self-questioning, loss of interest, confusion about your purpose. Becker calls this the death of the symbolic self, not physical death, but the end of a story. And oh, my friend, that can feel more painful than anything physical, because you're not just losing something external, you're losing the version of you that you believed kept you safe. Here's the beautiful part, Becker adds. When your old story collapses, you finally have space for a real one. Most people don't question their meaning until it breaks. Meaning rarely changes when life is comfortable. It changes when life shakes you awake. That is why breakdowns often lead to spiritual awakening, new careers, healthier relationships, deeper creativity, mature emotions, stronger values, rediscovered passions, more authentic living. Your crisis is not the failure of your life. It is the failure of an illusion. And once the illusion breaks, you can finally see yourself clearly. Becker reminds us, a breakdown is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that your soul is refusing to live inside a story that no longer fits. The collapse of meaning is the invitation to build a new one, an honest one, a human one, a more flexible one. You're not falling apart. You're outgrowing your old self. Your identity is shedding. Your ego is softening. Your emotions are recalibrating. Your story is rewriting. This is painful, yes, but it is also necessary. Think of it like a snake shedding its skin. The process is uncomfortable, but the result is renewal. When immortality fails, life begins. Because now, you stop living for society's expectations. You stop chasing someone else's dream. You stop pretending to be invincible. You stop clinging to perfection. You start being honest with yourself. Your crisis is not the enemy. It's the teacher. It's the doorway from unconscious living to conscious existence. Oh, my friend, the moment everything feels like it is falling apart might be the exact moment everything real begins to come together. If the earlier chapters revealed how we run from mortality unconsciously, then this chapter is about something gentler, quieter, and much more powerful. What happens when we stop running? What happens when we accept? Not surrender, not despair, not hopelessness. Acceptance. The simple human recognition that life is temporary, and that's precisely what makes it beautiful. Becker says something people often misunderstand. The fear of death doesn't imprison you. Running from it does. When we deny mortality, we spend our lives chasing validation, clinging to identity, fearing failure, needing recognition, comparing constantly, avoiding vulnerability, craving certainty, resisting change. All exhausting. All attempts at symbolic immortality. But when we accept mortality, not intellectually, but emotionally, something inside us softens. A calm arrives, a clarity, a groundedness. You no longer need to prove your worth to the universe. You simply live. Here's something beautiful. Becker wasn't a Buddhist, but his ideas align deeply with Buddhist thought. When you stop clinging to the illusion of permanence, you begin to see life clearly. Impermanence is not a tragedy. It's a teacher. It teaches you to love fiercely because nothing lasts forever. It teaches you to forgive quickly because time is limited. It teaches you to pay attention because every moment is unique. It teaches you to stop postponing your life because no moment is guaranteed. When you accept death, you stop delaying living. People think accepting mortality means being okay with dying. No, my friend, acceptance is much more subtle. It means being okay with living honestly. Because once you accept that time is limited, you stop acting for approval, staying in fake friendships, wasting years in jobs you hate, avoiding your true desires, suppressing your emotions, building a life for others' expectations, pretending to be invincible. Acceptance brings alignment. You start asking, what really matters to me? Who do I really want to become? How do I want to spend the time I have? It's not the acceptance of death. It's the acceptance of truth. Remember in earlier chapters how anxiety came from the clash between infinite ego and finite reality? When you accept mortality, that clash dissolves. Suddenly, you no longer need to be perfect. You no longer need to be extraordinary. You no longer need to be remembered forever. Freedom isn't found in immortality. It's found in humility. When you stop trying to outrun death, you begin to outrun fear. Your nervous system relaxes because you're no longer fighting reality. You're flowing with it. Becker says acceptance gives you the one thing denial never can: lightness. Not irresponsibility, not indifference, but lightness. You begin to see life as a gift, not a problem. You enjoy the mundane: morning sunlight, laughter, tea, a walk, quiet moments, small victories, real connections. You no longer need life to be monumental. You just want it to be sincere. The pressure to be immortal disappears, and the joy of being alive appears. And that's when you finally feel free. Becker says something profound. Acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is waking up. Waking up to your humanity. Waking up to your vulnerability. Waking up to your relationships. Waking up to your desires. Waking up to your limitations. Waking up to your moment. And when you wake up, you stop living from fear and start living from presence. Self-acceptance grows. Compassion grows. Gratitude grows. Meaning grows. Because you're no longer asking life to protect you. You're simply choosing to experience it fully. My friend, acceptance doesn't take life's meaning away. Acceptance is what gives life meaning. Because if life were infinite, nothing would matter. But because it is short, everything matters. Every conversation, every love, every mistake, every breath, every sunrise, every forgiveness, every choice. Life becomes precious because it ends. Death is not the opposite of life. It is the boundary that makes life bright. My friend, we've walked through fear, ego, love, anxiety, collapse, meaning, and acceptance. Now we arrive at the question every human carries quietly inside their chest. How do I live, truly live, without fear? Becker never gives a formula. He gives something deeper, an invitation. I know that sounds strange, but hear me out, my friend. Every time you try to impress others, every time you chase perfection, every time you fear being forgotten, every time you panic about failure, you are trying to be something no human has ever been: untouchable. Becker says the first step to living without fear is simple but profound. Let go of the need to live forever, symbolically or emotionally. You don't need to be a legend. You don't need to be extraordinary. You don't need to be remembered for centuries. You just need to be here, alive, awake, present. What a relief that is, isn't it? Most people, Becker says, don't live. They perform. They spend their days trying to convince the world that they matter. But life begins when the performance ends. Life begins when you say, what do I value? Not society, not culture, not expectations. Live a life that feels meaningful, not a life that looks meaningful. Cook because you love the aroma, not because it looks aesthetic online. Learn because you're curious, not because it boosts your resume. Love because it warms your soul, not because it fills your emptiness. Walk because the evening air feels soft, not because your watch demands 10,000 steps. My friend, the moment you stop performing, your fear dissolves. Because fear is born from pretending. We expect too much from love. We want it to save us, complete us, define us. But Becker says, love without fear comes from loving with humility. Two humans, both imperfect, both temporary, both fragile, choosing to create meaning together. Not saving each other, not fixing each other, not immortalizing each other. Just walking through existence side by side. When love becomes companionship instead of salvation, fear disappears because nothing is at stake except honesty. We often think fearlessness means invincibility, but Becker flips that upside down. Fearlessness comes from embracing vulnerability, not escaping it. Every time you admit uncertainty, every time you say, I don't know, every time you show emotion, every time you ask for help, you step closer to truth. Vulnerability protects you from fear because fear grows in silence. When you speak your truth, fear loses its power. When you share your pain, fear loses its isolation. When you stop pretending to be strong, fear stops pretending to be bigger than you. The final step Becker gives is the foundation of emotional freedom. Build a small, sincere life you deeply believe in. Not an empire, not a legacy,
not a monument, just a meaningful existence in the time you have. Meaning doesn't need to be grand. It only needs to be authentic. Maybe your meaning is kindness. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's learning. Maybe it's giving. Maybe it's quiet. Maybe it's presence. Maybe it's love. Meaning is not measured by scale. It's measured by sincerity. A gentle life can be just as meaningful as a heroic one. So, my friend, how do you live without fear? Here's Becker's answer wrapped in one soft truth. You stop fighting death by finally choosing to live. Not for eternity, not for applause, not for approval, but for the miracle that you are here at all. You breathe deeper. You love slower. You forgive faster. You speak honestly. You walk lightly. You appreciate more. You cling less. You exist fully. Fear fades when life becomes real. Not perfect, just real. And that's it for today, my friend. You were listening to Wise Alchemy. The story ends here for now, but you and I will meet again. Thank you.